girls, grab your beers.
Hey everybody, this is Charlie from Anthrax, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
This is Mark Metcalf, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio.
You are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio. Yes, Kato Kalin listens to this all the time.
Welcome to today's Boondoggle. Now here's your host.
I am Monty Heath, so one Heath, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
Hey, what's up? It's John from Skillet, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle on Domain Cleveland Radio.
Fasten your seatbelts.
Sonic Temple Art and Music Festival returns to historic Cruise Stadium. Slipknot, Disturbed, Pantera, The Original Misfits, Evanescence, Limp Bizkit, Judas Priest, Stain, Breaking Benjamin, A Day to Remember, Falling in Reverse, Sleep Token, Rise Again, 311, Seether, Mudvayne, and many more. May 16th through the 19th, Columbus, Ohio. Tickets on sale now at SonicTempleFestival.com.
What's going on, everybody? It's Bill Bailey with today's Boondoggle. And real quick housekeeping note, if you're watching us on YouTube or Rumble or BitChute or Odyssey, please hit that follow and subscribe button. And if you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple, Google, whatever podcast platform you utilize, please hit that follow and subscribe button because it helps us with our numbers and to continue to bring you conversations like the ones that I'm about to give you today. I am talking with retired Army veteran John Davis. How you doing, John?
I'm feeling good, Bill. It's great to be here with you today and to talk on today's Boondoggle.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. Yeah. So, real quick before I get into the questions, I'll just give the audience a brief rundown. I happened to see, some of your Instagram posts, and it definitely caught my attention, and I wanted to get that information out to our fellow veterans and share, anything sunshine and, clear blue skies coming from a guy that's living in Cleveland, Ohio right now, where it's like up and down. That definitely catches my eye, and how I can do it on a retired military budget, and all that good stuff. I'm definitely looking to get that information out and obviously take some notes myself. But
yeah, I've been on a one-man mission to talk to veterans about how we can live healthier and happier abroad. Like you mentioned, a lot of veterans are retiring on fixed incomes. And when you have that fixed income, why not go to a place where you get the most bang for your buck? Why not make it so you can have the highest quality life possible? So kind of introducing veterans to the concept and opening their eyes to just the idea of living abroad has really been rewarding for me.
Awesome. Yeah, and I want to get into all that with you, but usually when I have people on for the first time, I like to get a background. So do you remember originally what did you want to be when you grew up?
No, I don't. I had no idea what the hell I wanted to be, and that's probably why I joined the Army.
And then when was it, like what age would you say you had that calling then to join the Army, or was it just like high school and it was just like, man, it's college or something?
I was going to join right out of high school, and my mother I grew up with a single mother, and she was dead set against it. She grew up with, her family and relatives in Vietnam, and she kind of saw the writing on the wall and the, kind of the similarities between the two conflicts. And so I decided to try community college, and I was far more interested in girls and alcohol than going to any type of classes whatsoever. So, of course, I failed out of community college and ended up joining the military. And I always tell people I'm one of the few community college dropouts that ended up going to Harvard.
Yeah, I read that in your bio too, and I want to get into that as well. But so you decided to join the military, and then what was it about? I mean, what pulled you to the Army?
I went and I talked to all of the branches, and the Army just made the most sense for me. They were like, hey, I was ready for adventure and I was ready to leave. And the Army was like, we're going to send you tomorrow. You can get the hell out of here tomorrow as soon as you take the ASVAB, the physical. So that kind of the quickness of it appealed to me. But also, I really didn't know. I joined to be an infantryman. I didn't even know that the military had like all these different jobs. I'm thinking, Army is Army. The recruiter was talking to me and he's like, so what do you do in the Army? And I was like, I want to be in the Army. I want to like fight and, do Army stuff. And he's like, okay, another dumb infantry guy. We'll sign you up on the line and ship you out.
Like
and
Bill Murray in Stripes,
Yeah. And then 3 months later, I'm in Afghanistan. So I went straight from basic training to Fort Campbell. And then a week and a half at Fort Campbell, went to Afghanistan.
Wow. Yeah, that was quick then turnover.
Yeah.
And then like what during your time in the military, what was like, coming from living with a single mom and then community college life and stuff, what were some of the oddest things that you experienced during your time in?
I would say the diversity of people was one of the crazy experiences of it, because what the military does is kind of such like a beautiful thing. I grew up in a small town in Iowa, and one of the beautiful things about the military is it takes people from every single corner of the country, every race, class, religion, all that stuff, and it forges them into a team of like brothers and sisters that would die for another. And when I look at America now, I don't see anything like that happening in any other aspect of American life other than the military. So forging these bonds with people really reminded me of, like, for example, like my high school football days, which I really enjoyed. And being on a team was something that really, really resonated with me, and feeling like I was part of something that was so much greater than myself. I loved the different types of people I met in the military. I remember like just meeting people from all over the country, learn about all these different cultures, all these people from different countries that were, in my unit. So I think that was probably one of the coolest things for me initially joining the military, as like a small town kid from Iowa.
Nice. And then what was like, without like breaking OPSEC, what was one of the worst places that you served at?
I was in Eastern Afghanistan, and we are an infantry unit. So we're out there running and gunning, seeing my friends get shot in Afghanistan. I was blown up myself. That's what led to, my medical retirement, was some back issues after hitting IEDs. So I would say, Eastern Afghanistan is not a place I would visit again. I much prefer living in the Dominican Republic than being in Afghanistan. It's a little more relaxed here.
Yeah. And then what were one of the best places you got to serve at when you were in?
I didn't serve anywhere that great, man. The military, I think the Navy gets to go to some cool places. You get to dock at some good places. You might go to Japan or like the Philippines or something. The Army kind of just sends you. I was in Fort Campbell and I was in Afghanistan. And, I enjoyed Fort Campbell because it's outside Nashville. So we'd go to Nashville on the weekends and party. And that was a lot of fun. But I think that the Air Force and the Navy kind of get stationed better in more desirable places.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. And
where were you at? I bet you were a bunch of cool places.
Well, I mean, most of my time was spent down in the Virginia area, Virginia Beach originally. And then, yeah, I mean, in Norfolk and stuff like that. Then, I mean, deployed to Kuwait and did a med cruise and stuff like that. But, yeah, I mean, I really can't complain. A lot of the places, and then, after 9/11, with the unit I was in, I got to go to, training in a lot of good areas, but, yeah, we would still find a thing to bitch about though, and say, how better the Air Force had things. Like even when I was down, when I was deployed, we'd be like, man, we got to go up to the Air Force base. They got a swimming pool, stuff like that.
I remember I did a 3-day R&R in Qatar when I was in Afghanistan.
Yeah, me too.
It was like 14 months. So I got to go to Qatar for 3 days, and really it just pissed me off because I had just like came out of like my small base in Afghanistan where like we didn't have showers most days and stuff. And then I see these Air Force people in Qatar, just seems like they're just relaxed. Like they don't even know what was going on a couple hundred miles away or whatever.
Did you get to go to that like little area that had like there was the Irish bar and it looked like a country bar, and then there's the bowling alley, and then the dudes playing music and all that stuff?
Yeah, it's like, a different world. And really, I left there and was just kind of mad. It brought up a lot of resentment towards the Air Force that probably isn't necessary. I can't blame them for being smarter on the ASVAB.
Exactly. And then what would you say is like one of your pet peeves with civilians since transitioning out?
A lot comes to mind. Maybe the individualism. I think that individualism is one thing that veterans kind of struggle with because we're so used to like the community mentality. And then we get out into the regular world and it feels so kind of like selfish as opposed to selfless. It feels way more hyper individual where everyone's in it for themselves opposed to people like working together. So I would say that is probably the most aggravating thing for me. And when I first got out, like going to college, I had to learn like not to curse, how to be more sensitive and things like that to people. And that is also kind of annoying, but sometimes necessary because you have to realize that some habits you should take forward from the military, like being on time, things like that. And some habits you have to leave behind, like some of the dark humor that we use in the military is just not appropriate in like college or business settings. Whereas you can say pretty much anything in the military. There's no like boundaries. Like nobody is like, whoa, I never heard that the whole time. Now now in the military, maybe because I've been out for a few years, but I think
me too, man.
Control that.
See, I hear all kinds of things about sensitivity training and all that now, and I'm just like, man, yeah, it was part of our therapy. I mean, when you're in the suck and when you're in shitty situations, what else are you supposed to do? It's like a defense mechanism, or and there's some of the stuff that what I liked about what you said too is just like it's all different races and cultures coming together, and we didn't really see color, man. We all wore the same uniform, and we were like brothers and sisters. And then to come out, and see how like everybody, so if they would have heard half the things we said to each other in there, we'd been canceled a long time ago. Heads would be exploding, But it was all it was terms of endearment. It was like our way of showing affection and love for each other, But what something along those same lines. What is something you feel that you'll always carry with you from your time of service?
I think maybe the idea to always leave things better than you found them. I think that's one of the good lessons that the military teaches you, to always add value to the things around you. Like you go to a base, you go here, people you come in contact with, you always leave them better than you found them. So I would say that, as well as one of the big lessons I took forward from the military was the importance of mentors, to always have a mentor and always be a mentor, which is some of the things I've written about in some of my books and stuff, that kind of fits in well with the military mentality, to always have someone you can rely on and always be someone that other people can rely on.
Yeah, I agree. And then what is like one of the funniest stories you feel you can share from your time of service?
Okay, so one time we were in something of like a serious firefight and my weapon got hit by a round. So like my weapon deadline, couldn't fire it anymore after I took the bullet. And I get back to my room that night, and I'm sharing a room with like 4 guys. It's my first deployment. And this guy comes up to me and he says, "Do you know why you didn't get shot today, Davis?" And I was like, no, I don't know. And he said, "It's because I cast a protective spell over the entire platoon." And this guy who's a Wiccan was in our platoon, and he used to carry a wand with him out on missions. So every mission, he'd like carry a wand in his assault pack because he believed in this like Lord of the Rings weird Wiccan
Harry
like,
Potter stuff, huh?
Harry Potter religion, which I was like, okay, thanks. And I was a little shaken after that because when you're weapon gets hit, that's about kind of as close as you can get. So then like
Yeah.
the next day I was like, hey, his name was Scott. I was like, hey, Scott, can you cast another like protection spell over me? And then before we went on a mission, he cast a spell on me with his wand. And I was like, okay, boom, let me go out. So I think that is just kind of a funny story. But if you're in the military for long enough, you get your fair share of crazy people and funny stories.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't heard that one yet, but that's a good one.
I was trying to think of something unique.
Yeah, I'm part of a jiu-jitsu school that is having a Lord of the Rings themed roll night coming up.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I'll have to make sure I share this story with them. Cast a spell.
Yeah, I've written on my
break
article
into
about
my-
how veteran, or on my website, I have an article about jiu-jitsu therapy for veterans, because so many veterans gravitate towards jiu-jitsu because it has some of the same military tenets when it comes to like the mentorship, the helping each other out, the community aspect of it. I mean, people in the jiu-jitsu room are like, are real close, and they're all kind of working together for common betterment. So I think jiu-jitsu is one thing that veterans really gravitate towards and really helps a lot of veterans post-service.
Yeah, I've had Blitz from the We Defy organization on here before too. It's another great organization.
Yeah, they're awesome.
For jiu-jitsu and everything. So yeah, I agree. It's definitely been one of the closest things I've been able to, find since being out, and there's a lot of, other veterans that are that I train with and stuff too. So
yeah, nothing can replicate that military bond, but I think jiu-jitsu is one of the things that comes close.
Yeah, I've met a lot of good people through that, so I'm happy to be a part of that. And then, what would you say is one of your greatest hopes for the country you've been willing to give your life for?
Greatest hopes for America. I would say that the military changes the trend in recruiting and gets people to join again, and people want to serve, and there's more patriotism in the country, and young people looking more favorably upon the military. I think that's a great hope for me, that kind of trend finds its way the other way, where people want to join the military. I was on a Zoom call a few nights ago with about 25 veterans, and somebody asked, hey, for those of you with kids, who would want your kids to join the military? And not a single hand went up. And to me, that was like, I don't have kids, but to me, that was such kind of a disheartening thing, because a lot of us come from military families. I mean, most people in the military come from military families. And when kids who served, when people who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, or who served in the war and terror time or whatever, are telling their kids not to join, that's when there might be a serious problem.
Yeah, I mean, I was just having this conversation myself the other day, and it's like, I would say maybe like 10 years ago. Of course, my girls were still little then, but now they're, young adult women. But when we were thinking about, okay, what are you going to go for, grow up and want to do and go to college for and stuff. And if they, considered the military, I was supported back then. Of course, I would have said, hey, go Air Force, the swimming pool and everything, but yeah, I mean, I'm one of those parents today with the way things that I've seen. And, I don't want to get like too much down the rabbit hole with, a sensitive topic, but like the Afghanistan situation and how, just the past several years, man, it's just like, I don't know if I'd want my kids around that, with the lack of leadership that I see, and it's, how I feel personally and stuff. But,
yeah, I think the upper level leadership of the military needs a dramatic reorganization, because the fact that we, fought these wars for 20 years and our leaders kind of at least misled us the entire time about what we were doing, about the purpose of all of it. There's a great book I recently read called The Afghanistan Papers, where they get into how, top level military leaders just essentially lied the entire time, knew what we're doing, was not making progress in Afghanistan. It's a great book for anyone who's interested in kind of diving into the weeds of the war, of like because what the reporter, the author did was he went and he got all these things unclassified that the people thought were going to be classified forever. So he got access to all these documents, all these generals and Secretary of Defense's thoughts during the early and mid years of Afghanistan.
Yeah, I mean, I've read a few things myself, and just that's the other thing too. Like looking back, why, I mean, I don't know. We can go down make a whole nother episode of who we were told was behind 9/11 and why we ended up in, some of the places we ended up afterwards, weapons of mass destruction, all that stuff. But I don't want to go too too far off the thing. But
but you're not wrong in saying, hey, for a generation that was told to find weapons of mass destructions that didn't exist and to win the war on terror in Afghanistan, which is an impossible conflict, it's hard not to be a little disappointed at the very least with your military leadership.
Yeah. And then, it's like none of us, came home the same people that we left, and so many of us didn't come home. And so many of us that, came home differently and, maybe didn't find a lot of what, we'll be talking about more of here in a little bit, lost their battle here at home for what, and then like you said, then we come back to this very selfish and self-centered society that are just well, so what, it became, like that ticker going across the bottom of the screen, was, maybe you'd occasionally hear about casualties and stuff. And then we just didn't talk about it because we didn't want to hurt people's feelings. And then it just totally seemed to desensitize the American public to what was being given up and what was happening, to their own fellow Americans,
Yeah. It's a huge problem. The growing divide between the military and civilian populations is a serious problem for America, for the military, for everyone in the future, because a very small percentage of the population shouldered, this hardship of war, of deploying over and over again, while the rest of the country sat home and, discovered internet porn and got into the Real Housewives shows and things like that. So we just lived two entirely different realities for far too long. I remember coming back from, I think my second deployment, and I was going on my mid-tour leave, and I stopped in a Starbucks. This is at least over 10 years ago now. And I stopped in a Starbucks in Atlanta airport. I'm a big coffee guy, and I was very excited to get a hot cup of coffee. And a guy in front of me in the line was like, "Where are you coming from?" And I was like, "I just come from Afghanistan." He's like, "Afghanistan? That's still going on." And this was I don't know, maybe 2013, 2014. I was like, yeah, it's still fucking going on. It's big time going on. So, I think that we just lived two different realities for far too long. And it, we were forever changed, and the country just kind of proceeded on. And I think one of the problems with the military civilian gap is as the civilian population kind of drifts away from us, they also drift away from military values. Things like integrity, things like service, concepts like honor. These are, inherently military concepts that the civilian population is kind of losing. And same with things like community.
Yeah, I agree. Sure. And then, speaking of the guys that come home that are still battling their demons, what do you feel is something we can do to break the stigma of mental health and PTSD?
I think the veterans have to kind of understand that you have to be the director of your own therapy. You cannot leave your therapy or your betterment or anything like that in the hands of the VA. If the government broke you, then maybe the fix might be elsewhere. And when you're exploring your own therapy, it's like what you mentioned with the concept of jujitsu therapy. Okay, you have to get out of the VA's kind of merry-go-round of medication and therapy and things like that, because a lot of veterans that are in therapy would more benefit from things like coaching, would more benefit from things like alternative therapy. It doesn't matter what that therapy is. I've written about lots of different kinds of therapy, so I think veterans have to kind of find what works for them, For me, being out in nature was a hell of a lot more beneficial to my mental health than anything the VA did for me. So I started looking at Mother Nature as my therapist and not necessarily, my doctor at the VA. So I think there's a lot of inconvenient truths about the therapy industry, about the pharmaceutical industry. A lot of people are getting money from veterans problems, veterans included.
Yeah. And I know for me, personally, it's like you're, I agree, man. It's like, I mean, the VA's come a long way from, where it was, but it's still, I mean, I felt like, I was getting a pill thrown at everything, and I was almost getting like over medicated at first. And there was a time where they weren't even like checking what pills didn't interact correctly with these other pills. And then I ended up, having a incident where my blood pressure dropped and I passed out, and then I had to get like 17 staples in the back of my head, because of an issue with medication. So it's just like I'm getting TBI at home, almost, and it's like service connected with all my other stuff or whatever. But it wasn't until I discovered other veteran organizations outside of the VA. Like one of the biggest ones that helped me originally, it's like there's this place that used to operate here called Wags for Warriors, and you got a service dog and you trained with the dog, and that was a big help. And then talking with those veterans, they tell you about other organizations that they've been through and checked out. And then there was this place, Higher Ground, out in Idaho, which was recreational therapy, like you were saying, getting back in nature. I went on this trip where we went horseback riding up into the Sawtooth Mountains. We camped out for a week and we're fly fishing, drinking water right out of a spring, right out of the mountain. I mean, that was the beginning, man. And that's when then you talk to those guys and you hear about other, organizations. And, that's been part of my journey. I've done float tanks. I've done cryo. I've done, and unfortunately a lot of stuff out of pocket, because the VA is now finally getting into acupuncture and, chiropractic, but it was part of my journey. And now, like I was saying before we went on the air, this is part of my healing and therapy, talking to other veterans, talking to other people on here. This Friday, I'll be 15 years sober,
Big congrats.
That was, that was my crutch before, my self-medication, but now it's like, and it's taken me this long to still try and get to a place sober to learn how to get out in public and communicate and be around people and stuff. This is part of my journey. And now some of the organizations I've been through, I've had on to get the word out to other veterans. And then some organizations I've had on, I haven't been through yet. And I'm like, all right, well, cool, man. When can I come out? But I still getting the word out to other veterans. And then, like I said, seeing your story on Instagram and sending you that message, I was like, well, this looks like something. I mean, selfishly, it's something I'm interested in for myself, but use this opportunity to share and get the word out with other veterans that follow my show as well. So I want to start. For me,
it's like for the living abroad stuff, I was shocked at how much my mental and physical health improved when I moved abroad. So I live in the Dominican Republic, and as far as the mental health aspect goes, it was only a short period of time living down there until eventually I didn't need the PTSD medication that I had been on for years. I started sleeping through the night. I stopped having migraines. I stopped having nightmares. And I realized how much healthier physically I was living as well. I was spending more time outside. Americans spend 90% of our time indoors, and I was outside in the sun. I was drinking fresh coconut water and not the energy drinks that we pound in the military. I was also eating healthier food and not the processed food that we eat all the time in America. The United States leads the world in chronic diseases. And part of that is because the American lifestyle is so unhealthy. From what we consume, the information we consume, to the food we consume, all of that leads to toxicity. And that's when it kind of hit me that maybe some of my problems weren't necessarily with me. Maybe it was my environment. And that's what led me on a mission to talk to veterans about how sometimes we can live healthier, happier, higher quality, and kind of, I think most importantly, more peaceful lives outside the United States. Because for veterans, a lot of us, after 20 plus years of war, after multiple deployments and all this, we don't want to live in a country that feels like it's at war with itself.
Yeah. And, I've been having this debate with my significant other recently too. We're still, first year into this thing, but I'm like, she's just like, well, the FDA wouldn't approve it if it wasn't good, and I'm like, I'm like, sweetheart, you gotta like really look into, these organizations that you think are like protecting us with the food that
Right.
Everybody's getting a payola, to push things through. I mean, you can go back to Rumsfeld with the aspartame, getting approved and put in for the sugar supplement and stuff. And I mean, it's just, there's so much I'm trying to, talk to her about, but I know for myself too, it's just like, I mean, like I said, I'm approaching 15 years sober, but one of my biggest struggles still is sugar, that sugar addiction, and when things get a little too, or I start feeling a little uncomfortable, man, I'm going to find some chocolate or something and pop in my mouth, and I would rather, like the stuff that we're being told here that is, oh, well, this is healthy or sugar-free or, whatever, there's,
or organic or whatever else, whatever bullshit they're selling today. Yeah. And disconnecting from that, for me has really been life-changing. And that's why it's been cool to share the information with other veterans. And like you mentioned, I kind of just started like making funny Instagram videos, because I've already been a writer. I've already published a book. I've already kind of like done all that.
Yeah. I wanted to ask like about that progress too. Like before you discovered living abroad, now you did, what were you still active when how did Harvard come into the picture?
When I got out of the military, so when I got out of the military, I ended up going to school. And then I took a teaching position in Thailand. And that was my first experience of living abroad. I was teaching English in Thailand to kids. And I remember going there to Bangkok, and I go to find an apartment, and I find this like beautiful building. And the guy takes me in, and he shows me this amazing, majestic apartment with like a rooftop pool with a nice gym in it, gorgeous view of the city, all furnished. And I was like to the guy, okay, like how much is it? And he's like $350. I said, $350 what? He's like $350. And I was like, per week? He goes, no, like per month. And I was like, this was like, 2016, 2017 or something. And I was like, what? So I gave him $350. He gave me a key, and he just left. And he goes, I'll come back in a month. And I'm in this apartment, and it's the most beautiful apartment I'd ever lived in. It was gorgeous. I'd swim up on the rooftop pool, look over the city. And that's when I realized like how much cheaper life was abroad and how expensive it is in America, from the food we eat to our housing. I mean, I tell people now, I'm like, hey, for veterans, the American dream is alive. It's just not in America. Like, you can have the high quality life that you want. It might be in like Costa Rica or Dominican Republic or Thailand or whatever. But now veterans are starting to discover like, okay, maybe I can take my benefits and live a higher quality life elsewhere. Because the reality is, as you know, like a military retirement in America does not get you very far, unfortunately. I mean, that's just the situation that we're in, where even if a veteran does 20 hard years in the military, and those years, they're like dog years. They age you harder. They're fat, they're harder on your body and your mind, your soul. And then so veterans retire and they need to immediately like start working again. But when I meet veterans abroad, it's like I meet these veterans who are not only surviving, they're thriving. And it's not like living abroad is a cure-all or something everyone should do. But for the veterans that it's for, I want to get the information out there. And that's what led to me first just writing articles on my website. Like, hey, this is about living in the Dominican Republic. This is how you get your health care there. This is how that works. Because a lot of veterans are simply unaware that you can get your VA benefits outside the United States. They're unaware you can use TRICARE outside the United States, or your GI Bill, or all of the things that you can do outside of America. It sounds crazy to say, but I feel more free in the Dominican Republic than I do in the United States.
And then so you were teaching over in Thailand, and that was
and then I got into Harvard.
Then you got into Harvard.
Then I applied to Harvard for grad school.
And then did you come back to the States for Harvard, or did you satellite Harvard?
No, I went to Boston. I moved to Boston.
Okay.
And then that's what kind of led me into my veteran advocacy work. Was when I was going in Boston, I applied for a legislative fellowship position with the Veterans of Foreign Wars and was accepted. So I got to meet with Congress and pitch ideas for veteran issues. And I drafted and wrote legislation for student veteran employment. So I wanted an expansion of the VA work study program to provide more employment opportunities for student veterans while they're going to school. Because obviously, as you know, student veterans tend to be non-traditional students and tend to need employment during their education. So I wanted the VA to provide more employment that was aligned with the student veterans' educational goals to help them get through college. Because a lot of what people don't know, and I know you know this, but if you're a veteran, you don't understand, there are two classes of people in the military across the Navy, from the Navy to the Army to whatever else. It's all the same. You have officers and you have enlisted. And these people have access to the same benefits when you get out of the military, but have significantly different outcomes. So officers make more money. Officers struggle less with PTSD. Officers get divorced less. Officers are homeless less. Officers are addicted less. And officers kill themselves less. And the big difference between officers and enlisted is the college degree. But by the time enlisted people get to college, you're like me. You're a 30-year-old college freshman, and it's not always the easiest thing to do. So I wanted
like Billy Madison, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I felt like in college.
Yeah, me too.
So you sit there. So my idea was to go to Congress and pitch this legislation. So I toss on a suit and a tie, and I get to meet with congressional people. And I'm very passionate about this issue because I think that if we got more veterans into college, maybe not necessarily traditional education always, but if we got them into education, into training, and the certification programs, then we'd see a big impact on the veteran community, on those, because the reality is people with college degrees do make more money. So when I went and talked to Congress, nobody I talked to gave a shit about anything I was saying. I mean, I couldn't get my points across. I remember sitting down with one congresswoman from my home state of Iowa. And, I got introduced, hey, this is John. He's from Iowa. He's a combat veteran. He's a graduate student at Harvard. He's got this proposal. And I'm supposed to get 15 minutes with her to kind of pitch it. I have my PowerPoint. I have graphs. And when you're drafting legislation for Congress, it's not like a fifth grade book report. I mean, this was like 6 months of work, data, charts, all this kind of complicated academic stuff. And I sat down and she listened to me for like 10 seconds. And then I see her text on her phone. And then she cuts me off after like a minute and a half. And it's like, John, thank you. Wow, great information. I have to run. If you could email the rest of it to my assistant. And she leaves. And I'm sitting there, suit and tie. And it was such like this wake up moment for me as a human, as a veteran, all that stuff, that we can't rely on people like that to help us, because they're not going to. They don't care. So that's what led to me writing my first book, which is behind me in a tier, Combat to College, which is a guide for student veterans. And in it, I kind of detail how student veterans can maximize your college time to set yourself up for success, how to network, how to be successful in the classroom, how to set yourself up for success beyond graduation. So that kind of led me into talking to student veterans kind of all over the country, getting to travel, talk at colleges and stuff like that.
Now, I originally, it was early on in my home, coming home and, early on in my recovery too. So maybe my mindset wasn't where it needed to be. But I felt like, man, I went to college and I was like 3 semesters away from getting my master's degree. And I honestly, looking back, I realized I picked the wrong. When I originally got home, I was like, I got sober and I got saved, and you get that buzz, like, I'm going to help everybody,
Mm-hmm.
So I picked, a field that I thought I would be able to help my fellow veterans or other people in recovery and stuff like that. And it should have been probably a field like that, but it seemed like the college that I went to was very, veterans weren't a priority. It was like, if Tommy wants to be Tammy and he wants to go to this bathroom, we got to do, what we can to help, and though that seemed to be the stuff that was getting pushed in the priorities. And it got to the point where it's just like, I was pushing myself through something that I fell out of love with. And like I said, there was this big election in 2016, and the field that I was in, like, everybody had a day of mourning in the classroom,
Yeah.
and I'm like, what the F is going on?
Yeah. And I get into that in my book. I talk about, if you're a veteran at college, how to deal with like political professors, how to like manage your education in a way that makes sense, because you're not there for them, you're there for you. And getting to the graduation stage is kind of the important part, but you do have to learn how to keep your mouth shut, which you learned in the military anyway, but in college it can be.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately for me, I just got so beaten down and it got so bad that I ended up on probation. And then it was just like, then I was like, I almost felt like targeted, and it's a whole, another thing. And then I just like, I was defeated and I just like left.
And
I never finished my master's degree. And I still have my bachelor's, but I'm not doing a thing with it because I'm just like, when I look at it, I'm bitter and angry still. And I gotta work on that. I gotta process that, because it's like, I need to, I mean, this is something that what I'm doing now with this podcast is something that I've always wanted to do ever since I was, young and stuff. So I feel like I'm pursuing more of a passion and purpose, and I'm still kind of using my, what I was going to school for in a way, but I'm not getting paid for it, and that's the thing. I need to, I don't want all that stuff to be wasted. So I gotta look into a way to kind of flip those classes around and get that piece of paper and do something,
Yeah.
But
absolutely. And
I was so like beaten down and defeated through that whole process, over the politics, and then targeted as, like you said, we're in there, we're older, and we're not as young as and impressionable as our classmates, and we're kind of world traveled and experienced a bit, and we're like, what are you feeding these people? And they're eating it up. And it's like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I should keep and I nearly bit my tongue out of my mouth. I don't know how many times. And it just got to the point where, so hopefully it's been several years now.
Yeah.
I need to do something with that. So maybe I'll get your book and learn if I can go back, if there's a chance for me to still utilize some benefits, and maybe I could do it abroad,
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, you can go to school online, and just so you know, the GI Bill, how it works is your BH is a flat rate abroad. A lot of people don't know how the GI Bill works abroad. But if you go to school in Mexico, for example, if you attend one class in person, your BH is going to be, it's just over $2,000 in 2024. So a lot of veterans that I know, they might be 100% service connected from the VA and going to school in Mexico, getting that $2,000 a month and living like kings and queens in Mexico because the cost of living is so low.
Nice.
So no matter where you go in the world, if you go to Germany, if you go to Mexico, if you go to Argentina, wherever, your BH, if you attend a class in person, is just over $2,000 a month.
Well, hopefully I didn't use all my stuff up, and it's not too past the point. I mean, I'm 50 now, and I've kind of, like I said, I walked away from a lot of stuff, and my kids have been my daughters have been using the dependency education.
Yeah, and you're still engaging in self-education, which is kind of the thing. The problem that some veterans have is once they get out of the military, they kind of stop learning because it's easy to stop learning, to stop thinking, to stop seeking self-improvement when you don't have kind of like the mechanisms of something like the military pushing you to be a better person, pushing you to be better, pushing you to grow, pushing you to improve yourself. But you're obviously engaging in stuff like, healthy stuff, jiu-jitsu, talking to veterans, doing something positive for the world. So it's more about veterans sometimes being lifelong learners opposed to just sitting in a classroom, because the GI Bill now is more flexible to where it'll pay for a lot of the apprenticeships and certifications and trade schools and things like that, and not only just like sitting in a chair listening to some professor talk.
And I've always considered myself a student for life anyway. It's like, I watch YouTube videos and whatever on things I'm curious about, but I got to learn the how to get more bang for my buck though. Like,
that's why I started making the videos, because I realized that people don't really read the articles as much, but they'll watch a video. So if I make a video like, hey, here's me, on a beach in Dominican Republic, here's what my apartment looks like, here's this, here's that, people are more receptive of it. Whereas if I write on my website, it's harder to get the information out. So that's what kind of led to me thinking, okay, I'll travel around and make Instagram videos for veterans who are interested about moving abroad. And then I'll write an article about it. And it's been so awesome to be able to do it because, like 2 months ago, I was in Thailand and I met with the VFW posts over there. I go and talk to the hospitals where the veterans get their health care. And I get this information. I'm able to put it out to veterans, kind of like veteran to veteran, just, hey, here's information. And that's been really cool. And I've gotten, hugely positive response from it. There's still some people that talk shit, but it's the internet. So you're always going to have that.
That's what they're going to do. But I got a friend of mine. He wasn't a veteran or anything, but man, he's out in Thailand or traveling right now. And he's been doing it for years. He's got like a little, I think a weed farm or something set up out there or whatever. Hey, good for him or whatever. But he's been, this past summer, he's like, dude, get your passport, come on out, check it out. And it's just like, I'm kind of with family situation and stuff right now. It's like, my daughters are grown women now, so it's like they can handle their stuff. But, my dad passed a few years ago. He was a World War II Marine, and it's just my mom, and, I'm the most able-bodied child to help out, and she's going in, for another surgery this week. So it's like hard to,
if you're ingrained in, I always tell people, listen, I'm no wife, no kids, no pets, no problems type of veteran. So my life is a little simpler, but I have been amazed at how many families reach out to me, how many female veterans and things like that, and talk about living abroad. Right now I have a female veteran who's writing an article for my website about living abroad. She lives in Costa Rica. So it's kind of like getting that information out has been kind of interesting too, because I didn't anticipate that so many veterans with families would be wanting to leave the United States. So many military spouses will contact me on my website or email or social media or whatever and talk about like international schools. And the reality is a lot of international private schools are higher quality education than American public schools. I mean, you have to pay for them. That's why they're private schools. But a lot of these schools provide a very, very high quality education. And a lot of people are thinking more about things like homeschool, especially with like the internet. So like I know a family in Dominican Republic of 2 veterans, they have kids and they homeschool their kids at home. So things like that have kind of been a surprise to me because I didn't realize how many families would kind of be sick of the BS United States and interested in like really taking the step to move abroad.
Yeah. And like, like I said, I'm kind of, still new in this relationship, and my significant other, she's a firefighter, EMT, and she's got young kids, and this is something, like I said, I'm interested in, but it's like it would be selling her and the kids on it would be if all went like well and they were down for it, I have to consider the other people. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
My daughters, they're, like I said, young adults. So if they, want to stay, although I would, it would be tough. Like you said, you're single and everything, no kids, but with all the craziness here in the country as a dad. Do I leave my,
Yeah, I can understand
try
that.
and get them to go, or do I,
A lot of veterans I talk to are also like waiting for their kids to graduate high school. Like, hey, waiting for the kids to graduate, and then I'm going to move abroad. So you talk to veterans like that because it's good to have a plan when you're thinking about moving abroad. It's not something you just, you buy a plane ticket and you leave, and then that's just it. It's something that takes a little bit of time and planning and resources. And that's why I wrote the guide on my website, the guide for veterans moving abroad, because it kind of goes through some of the steps and addresses some of the issues that you're going to deal with and things like that. So, I have all information out on there about like visas, about safety abroad, about the things that you might need to know when it comes to like leaving America. So kind of putting all that information out there to veterans was probably easier for me than just responding to all the questions. I'm like, I'll just write it and I'll just send it to people and they can read it.
Yeah, like your FAQ or something. But
yeah,
yeah. So like, I mean, some of the questions I would have too is just like, citizenship. Are you have you established like a dual citizenship, or do you expatriate, or
the Dominican Republic, one of the reason why we have over 20,000 veterans that live here in the Dominican Republic is because the citizenship for the DR is so easy. You don't need to do anything if you don't want to. So other countries, you have a time limit for how long you can stay there. In Dominican Republic, if you're an American, you can come here and stay pretty much as long as you want, and you just pay a fee when you leave. So I retain my American citizenship and an address at my brother's house in America. And, if you go to Thailand, for example, they are more strict on immigration. You have to apply for a visa. You have to be able to show an income, a retirement, things like that. Same with places, even like Costa Rica and Colombia, like they have something called a pension visa, where if you have a military pension, you qualify for this, and you have to show them that you have this pension month to month, and then they'll grant you your, short-term citizenship for there. So every country is a little bit different, but what a lot of veterans do is they'll go somewhere like Mexico, which gives you 6 months. So you can be in Mexico for 6 months with no issues. Then you can leave for a couple of days and then go back to Mexico. So a lot of stuff like that veterans do to kind of get around some of the immigration stuff. Or a lot of veterans end up like moving to the Philippines, marrying a Filipino girl, and like getting their citizenship there through that.
Oh, okay. Instead of the other way around.
Yeah, it's the other way around there, which is kind of funny.
I remember seeing that so much on the Navy bases and stuff, but
yeah. So it's kind of that type of stuff. So those types of things are different country to country, and I get into a little bit of it on my guide, but some of those rules are also kind of changing here and there. So it's something, double check before you do anything.
Yeah, like, I mean, Costa Rica's been on my radar for a while because I've heard about the veteran community down there, and I heard about, they have a VA and stuff like that. So that was like, that was one of the things on my list that I wanted to check out. I was unaware of, Dominican Republic being as well. I remember serving with a guy from Dominican Republic,
Yeah, so there are countries now that have these clinics that pop up for veterans, and they're not actual VA, but they're third-party clinics that contract with the VA. So when I go to get my health care in Dominican Republic, I go to a building. It looks kind of like an American VA. There's American flags outside, there's Marine flags, Navy flags, all that stuff. And I go in, get whatever health care that is necessary, whether it be like a chiro, mental health, whatever you're doing, primary care, they have it all there. And then they turn around and they bill the VA. So nothing comes out of pocket for me. And the clinic in the Dominican Republic bills the VA. And they have clinics like this. Costa Rica, Panama has them. Mexico has them. Thailand, Philippines. I'm sure other countries do as well. But these clinics are kind of like a godsend for veterans, but they only treat service-connected stuff. So, for example, if you have 100% service connection, then you can get pretty much all the treatment that they would offer, including like the medications. But another thing that's important to remember is healthcare and medication in other countries is just so much astronomically cheaper than it is in the United States. If I, say you're on something like a blood pressure medication or something, you can just go to the pharmacy and buy it for like $6 for like a 3-month supply. It's not a big deal. So it's one of those things where you can really see the difference between like American healthcare system and how our healthcare works in other places.
Wow. Yeah. And then, I'm 100%. So I get dental here and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, do they have that out there as well?
So then
or?
every medical clinic, what they do is they'll have a relationship with a local dentist, but dental work, is so cheap other places. If I want to go here in Dominican Republic and like get my teeth cleaned, it'll cost me like $15. So it's just something that you could just go and do without it being that big of a deal. Now, there's a reason why like women fly here to the Dominican Republic to get like cosmetic surgeries or boob jobs or all that stuff, because the healthcare is so much cheaper. I mean, it's cheaper to fly to Dominican Republic and get like a boob job than it is to get it in the United States. So it's funny. Sometimes I'll be on a plane coming back and there'll be like 10 American women who flew down for surgeries, because like medical surgery, tourism is a big deal now. People fly for those types of things. So one of the things that just amazed me abroad is how much cheaper healthcare is compared to the United States.
Well, that was one of the topics of discussion with my significant other, though, about like, well, yeah, when people go down to like Mexico for stuff and then they're getting like cement like put in them or whatever. That's why we have, the FDA and all this stuff here. It's like they're getting butchered down there and poisoned. Or
America
whatever.
wants you to be sick. America wants you to be a customer, not a patient. And I think that since I moved abroad in my own personal experiences, I've gotten better healthcare than I did from the VA in the United States. For my medical clinic, and I write about it on my website, there's no such thing as waiting times. If I call and I say I want an appointment, I'm going that day to talk to a doctor. It doesn't, wait times don't exist. And everything that you can basically get from a VA, you can get in the Dominican Republic or in Costa Rica or in Panama, all that. The idea that America has the best healthcare system in the world is just wrong, because you look at Americans and look how unhealthy they are. Is it the best when it comes to stuff like cancer treatment? Yes. But for like everyday health, if you need certain medications, if you need, massage therapy or chiropractors or things like that, you can get it abroad.
Well, and here's the other thing too. I mean, you've been doing this for how long now?
I've been living abroad for about 4 years.
4 years now. And you've talked with a lot of other veterans that have been doing this same thing. Like, how many have you met that, say, like we were talking earlier, how the VA would throw, so many prescriptions at you at the beginning. How many of them went from taking, I don't know how many pills a day, just moving to that type of environment outside in the sunshine, feet in the ground, like walking and eating healthier and stuff like that to like one or nothing, in medication.
Yeah, it's honestly, when you find yourself in a healthier environment, you're just going to be healthier. Like I mentioned, I needed sleep medication for like years when I got out of the military, like years and years on sleep medication. And then when I got to the Dominican Republic, I kind of just stopped needing it. I mean, I stopped needing to sleep. I stopped needing the anxiety medication that I had been on. And for me, getting to share the information with other veterans has been really cool, because I tell veterans, hey, especially veterans who are struggling, especially if, God forbid, you're thinking about like taking your life or something like that, come to the Dominican Republic. I'll put you on the beach, put a beer in your hand, and I promise you life's going to be better. So a lot of what health is environmental. And when you're living in a unhealthy environment, you're going to be unhealthy, both physically and mentally. And I think there's something to be said for a fresh start. A lot of veterans, like, you mentioned, are very good at screwing up their lives, but there's a real beauty in getting a fresh start. And it's not only like just moving abroad, it's also things like travel therapy. Like, hey, take a month, come to the Dominican Republic, go to Thailand for a month, take a month to decompress, take a month to heal yourself. Like these things are important for veterans.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too. Like, you don't have to, I mean, I would assume you'd recommend this as well, as like, before you like, move everything, like maybe just dip your toes in certain areas, check it out for a little bit, do like a week or two or a month.
Yeah. You got to do a recon. Yeah. You always come down to visit before you make the ultimate move. Absolutely.
And then, what would you recommend for, somebody that's able to, I guess, single veterans like yourself or whatever, that's able to hit a lot of the other areas? Like, what would you, what would your recommendation be for them? Like, like I said, getting to check out the different areas and maybe, hey, I mean, when I visited Idaho and I did that trip with the higher ground, like I was ready to move to Idaho because that's how better I felt just being in nature, in the wilderness and the mountains and stuff.
Fresh air, all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I felt so good, but I wasn't there during the winter. I was just there for like a week, and I was just like, I'm moving out here. This is going to be the best thing ever. But it's like, I probably would have hated it after a while.
Yeah.
And a lot of
the first thing you have to look at when moving abroad is cost of living and your finances. So on my guide, I get into some cost of living calculators where you can put in, hey, how much money you have and where that can provide you a high quality life. So that's kind of an important thing to recognize, is like, obviously the financial aspect is one of the most important, and one of the reasons that makes veterans move abroad, because you want a higher quality life. But you have to be careful when you move abroad about certain things. Like, one, listen, it's not a vacation anymore. Like, a lot of people come to Dominican Republic and they try acting like they're on a vacation. It's like, no, you're not on a vacation. You can't drink every day, like those types of things that kind of you fall into. So in my guide, I do talk about things like how to be careful, how to look out for yourself and stuff like that. And then the second thing to think about is what country fits you. What's cool about the world is it's a big world. There's lots of great countries out there where you can live a high quality life based on what kind of lifestyle appeals to you. For me, I like the beach. I'm a beach guy. I love swimming in the ocean every single day. So every single day I can swim in the ocean. And for me, that's been more therapeutic than any doctor I've ever been to. So getting to do things like that and share them with other veterans has been really rewarding for me, because I'm able to kind of open people's eyes to new possibilities. And I'm not saying that every veteran should move abroad. I'm not even encourage veterans to move abroad. I'm just providing the information so they can make the best decisions for their lives. And of course, like you mentioned, far easier to do as a single veteran than with a family, but everything's more complicated when you have a family.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, one thing too, is just like, all the added expenses that we have here. I mean, everybody's complaining about the cost of gas and everything. I mean, what's your traveling situation down there? Like, I mean, you still have a car? You get around?
I just walk everywhere. Yeah. I live in a small town. I can walk to the grocery store. I can walk to the gym. I can walk to restaurants. So, a lot of cities in the world are like very walkable, and public transportation is kind of more of a thing than it is in America. Like, you can just hop on, a motorcycle and they'll take you somewhere for like $1. So the transportation stuff, my costs are very low compared to the United States. My only bill that I have from the States is I still keep an American cell phone. So I still have like a Verizon cell phone, but my rent is only $500 a month. And then I pay maybe $150 for like air conditioning and internet. And then things like lunch, food, very cheap. I can go out to like a Dominican cafe or cafeteria and eat like a big lunch for like $5 or $6 every day. So it's kind of like, letting veterans know that life doesn't have to be as expensive as it is in America. Like, it just doesn't have to be. I mean, I feel like whenever I'm back in the States, if I leave my house, I'm spending like $100, cup of coffee, like $8. I mean, fill your gas tank up, it's going to be $80. I mean, stuff like that just kind of like gets to you. And then another thing that I've been talking to veterans about is just sometimes a simpler life is better. Like, in America, we're kind of conditioned for the rat race, conditioned to want like a fancy car and a big house, but those things don't really make you happy. Like, being content makes you happy. I remember like after being in Dominican Republic for like a month, I left my house, I went down to swim in the ocean, and I'm standing there watching the sunset, having a beer. I left my cell phone in my apartment, and it's just like taking a deep breath and realizing like, wow, like I'm content. I don't have to rush anywhere. I don't have to get anything done. I'm not stressed about anything. And that was so different from how I lived in America, because the rest of the world is just not as stressed as Americans are.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And then, you mentioned like, you pay for air conditioning and internet and stuff, like, so what's the utilities like out there? What's needed? What do you do can you do without, or you're comfortable without down there now?
Yes, like I know I have a veteran buddy who's a Marine. He lives in like this tiny apartment for $300 a month, and probably spends half the money that I do, because he doesn't drink, he doesn't go out. Me, I like drinking the expensive bourbon and things like that. And so cost of living is one thing that's kind of hard to nail down for me, for other people, because everyone has a different ideal quality of life. Some veterans are more interested in staying at home and cooking. Some veterans want to go out to eat every single night. Some veterans want things like a car. Some are fine with walking. So your cost of living is kind of dependent on the quality of life that you want. A lot of veterans, what they'll do, like I have a buddy who moved to Mexico a few months ago, and he's probably spending like the same amount of money that he did in the States, but he's living a much higher quality of life. He lives in a gorgeous house with a pool. He's got a maid that comes twice a week. He goes out to eat. He probably drinks more than he should. So he's able to live this kind of like rich person's life, quote unquote, in America, but for a fraction of the price that you would pay in America for that.
Now, obviously, something too that's would be beneficial for anybody that's considering moving abroad is, I know, when we got deployed, if we ever went among the populace, we got like, they gave us a briefing on like culture, what to do, what not to do. Obviously, that's something that you should look into and even learn the language.
Yeah, veterans are really uniquely suited to live abroad because, like you mentioned, we're already international citizens from our travels, and we prioritize respect. Like respecting other cultures is an important concept of being in the military. And so many veterans are first and second generation immigrants themselves. Like a lot of the veterans that I meet in Dominican Republic are Dominicans that served in the military. Then they move back to the Dominican Republic and, live like kings and queens off their military retirements. And they already speak the language and all that stuff. If you don't want to learn another language, then there are countries you can move to that have a high levels of English, what I get into in my guide. Like Panama, everyone there kind of speaks English. The Philippines, you don't need to learn, Tagalog, the language is there. Dominican Republic, where I live, there are some veterans that speak Spanish, some veterans that don't speak any Spanish at all, and some veterans that kind of are learning to get by. So speaking a little bit of a language is, of course, a good idea. I tell veterans, hey, if you want to move to Dominican Republic, and I talk to veterans all the time that want to, I'd be like, just get a Dominican girlfriend and argue with her, and you'll learn Spanish. You'll be good.
Yeah, right away. But yeah, it's definitely a good idea because it's like, regardless of where you go, there's always going to be good people and not so good people and whatever.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of try and stay hip. Like if somebody about to, pull a fast one on you or what,
And veterans know how to take care of ourselves, which I think is one of the important things. Like I know to not be walking around neighborhoods drunk at 3 a.m. that I shouldn't be in. So if you are a veteran, you're listening to this and you want to you're thinking about moving abroad, on my website, I do have the guide for veterans moving abroad. And on my social media, I post like videos about some of the benefits of living abroad, but there are drawbacks as well. It's not always a perfect life. I'd like to think, you're on a beach every day with pretty girls, but unfortunately that's not really the case. I still have to do my laundry and pay taxes and all that type of bullshit.
Yeah, don't be like the recruiters that sold us a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, that's what I try not to be.
A woman at every, waiting for you, but
yeah.
Now you touched briefly on it, but is there more on your website for veterans such as myself that have dependents?
So I have on the guide, it gets into some international school stuff, and it also gets into healthcare stuff. So most veterans just aren't aware that TRICARE exists abroad. But TRICARE, I got this book here that it's TRICARE Around the World. It's not my book, but it's a really good book if you're interested in learning about how to use TRICARE outside the United States. And I get into a lot of these resources and provide a lot of links so veterans can kind of do your own research, because I don't want to just tell people stuff, say, here's the VA's regulation on this, and here's the link for it, and stuff like that.
Now, this might be a dumb question, but you know how some of us veterans are. You know, we like to, you know, own firearms, go shoot our guns, and stuff like that.
I'm glad you touched on this.
Yeah. So, you know, if you're a hobbyist like that, what can you expect if you're going abroad? Is that something you just need to just be willing to give up?
So that is probably the one thing I think that stops more veterans from moving abroad than anything else, is the fact that nowhere in the world is like the good old US of A when it comes to firearm ownership. So in the Dominican Republic, if you become a dual citizen, you can own like one shotgun and one pistol, and that's it. And they are very, very expensive guns abroad. Any other country is, if you want to get a gun, it's incredibly expensive. And there's no really open carry anywhere in the world. There's no concealed carry anywhere in the world. Those things are very uniquely American. So when I left America, I did give up my gun collection, and it is kind of difficult for veterans because we're just so used to having that. It's part of our culture. It's part of military culture, is being armed. But it's something that in other countries is definitely more of a no-go. Some countries have a lot of hoops to jump through, and they're very expensive. And some countries, it's just not going to happen at all.
Yeah, because I mean, no matter, like I said, no matter where you go, there's you're gonna want to, you know, have feel that more secure. I mean, we're not running around like Blazing Saddles and stuff like that, and just shooting up in the air and whatever, you know. But you know, you feel like you want that piece of security. Something could go down, and you want to still defend whatever's yours wherever you're at. You know, so.
Absolutely.
You know, especially like I said, a guy like myself with dependents, you know. So I just things, I guess. Do you have like a section on your website to explain any of that stuff yet, or is that going to be the next article?
The guns are pretty much a no-go abroad. I mean, it takes, if you want to get a pistol in Dominican Republic, you have to get your citizenship stuff. You have to take a psychological exam, a background test. You have to go to a shooting range or prove you can shoot. It's a process, but it can be done. I mean, I do have veterans that do have buddies that do have guns. But if you go somewhere like Thailand, for example, it's just going to be a total no-go. You're not going to be able to own a gun in Thailand. It's going to be impossible. So there's some countries where it's a little bit more possible, and some countries it's just not going to work out.
Well, and then, you know, hearing that process in the Dominican, there will be, you know, many people that up here that would argue, well, that's the kind of process we need. You know?
And I understand that too. I mean, you should know how to operate a gun before you own one.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still like, you know, I mean, gung-ho for our Constitution, you know, because we took the oath for it. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, you know, it's like a lot of this stuff has gotten out of control up here where, you know, but like they say, you know, you disarm the good law-abiding citizens, the bad guys are still going to have the guns, you know? So but I do agree, maybe, you know, more testing, more whatever for that. But yeah, just something that came to mind. I figured I'd ask. And then,
I that's the question I get like all the time. I'm always like, yeah, you know, it's kind of a no-go, like the gun thing. You definitely can't take your guns from the United States.
Is there another thing that is like a huge roadblock too for veterans? That
I would say the language barriers and the gun ownership are the biggest things that kind of prevents veterans. The language barriers, I think, is something you can always work through because there's in expat communities, there's always English is always kind of the go-to. So like in 2 weeks, I go to Thailand. I'm going back there for some more stuff. And I don't speak a word of Thai. Of course not. You can look at me and be like, that dude definitely does not speak Thai. So, but I'll get by okay because I'll be around other veterans. I'll be in expat stuff. And the language of the world is kind of English. So you're going to be able to get by. If you move somewhere like Dominican Republic, you can also get by with just English. There are plenty of people that just speak English in the Dominican Republic. And then the gun ownership thing, I think, is probably the one I get most from veterans where they're just like, you know, social media or email or whatever. It's just like, hey, if I can't take my guns, I'm not going. I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm not telling you that you should move. I don't get paid if you like move somewhere. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm, if you don't need them, I'm kind of, I guess I'd be like you selling, but
yeah, I feel safe. I feel safer abroad than I do in America. So for me, it's not really that big of a deal, but I do understand a lot of veterans are very attached, and I was too for a long time. And, it's just one of those disadvantages and drawbacks because everything has pros and cons. You're going to have pros and cons to anything.
And that's something that, I guess like, things like jujitsu help you with a little bit too,
Yeah.
It's just like, man, if I can, there's going to be situations where you're not going to always have your toys or whatever to play with,
Right.
You got to be, able to take care of yourself what's your experience been like, when you go to Thailand and how long you usually stay in there?
I think this time I'm going to do like 3 weeks. So I'm going to go and hang out for a little bit. Then I'm going to do a Muay Thai camp. So I'm going to train Muay Thai for like 10 days straight, like twice a day at this place with a Marine buddy of mine. So we're going to go out there and train for a while. So I think Thailand's one of like the most healing countries because one, it's like super cheap. The food is amazing. Like I get a massage every single day when I'm there because you can get an hour-long massage for like $7. So it's one of those kind of cool things where it's like, oh, this is awesome. And then they have like meditation, the Buddhist culture, temples, all that stuff is really cool to explore. And while I'm there, I'll also meet with the American Legion post there, and I'll meet with the Veterans of Foreign Wars post there, and kind of like to research more about veterans living in Thailand.
And that's something else I wanted to ask you too. Then, with all these connections that you have, do you have like a, for any other veterans that consider this, making this jump? Is there like a way for them to get involved with this network of people?
So there's a big Facebook group of U.S. military veterans living abroad that I'm not really associated with, but I know them through mutual stuff and have done some stuff for their website. And so if you look that up, you'll see veterans from kind of all over the world. So I always tell, veterans, join this Facebook group because that's a good way to connect with veterans. And then on my website, I'm having veterans, write. Like I have a veteran write an article on living in Germany right now. One of my buddies who lives over in Germany. So he's writing about that and his experience. And then people will be able to contact him with specific questions. But I also do like connect veterans with other veterans. Like if a veteran hits me up, like today, he'd be like, hey, I'm thinking about moving to Colombia. And I know veterans that live in Colombia, so I'll just pass along the information. And then if they have specific questions that aren't answered in my articles or guides, they can talk to someone kind of on the ground there. So for me, it's kind of like providing those resources is also important and be able to, be someone who veterans can come to and trust to figure stuff out.
Now, you wrote the book for college. Any plans to write a book for living abroad, or is that basically what your website is? It's just one big book?
I'm thinking about it in the future, maybe write a book on like veteran expat stuff because that's, an interesting concept. But it's kind of figuring out how to make that into a book. It would kind of have to be like my story. So for now, I have my guide about living abroad, which is like, 50, 60 pages. And it's a free PDF on my website. So anyone could go look at it. The resources are all free. I also have country guides on Dominican Republic, on Mexico, Colombia, Costa Rica, Thailand. I think I'm doing one in the Philippines in like a month when I get there. And I have more veterans writing guest articles about their experiences in other places. Like I mentioned, I'm having a female veteran write one. My buddy in Germany is writing one. I have a guy in Italy or Spain writing one as well about their experiences. So kind of like getting more and more information out there is my goal. More and more quality information.
Nice. And then we've mentioned it several times now. What is your website?
So it's johnhdaviswriter.com, writer.com. And then my social media where I post, videos on Instagram and TikTok as well. People can look me up. That's it. That's the living abroad spiel, I think.
Yeah. I think we've covered quite a bit, John. And man, it was good talking to you. I have your contact information now, so you definitely probably hear more from me.
Hey, if you want to come down to Dominican Republic, bring the wife. I'll set you guys up. Nice apartment for a week or something.
Yeah, dude, for sure, man, for sure. And then, wanted to keep spreading the word on this, and hopefully other veterans out there that are able to do this, or just like, I mean, like you said, it's just, I mean, I know one thing I've learned in recovery, because there's a lot of people will do like that relocation, like therapy, but if you don't take care of, it's like wherever you go, there you are. So if you don't take care of those deeper issues,
you can't run away from your problems.
You're still going to be, you run it like, like with me, if I was trying to move but not quit drinking, I'll still be miserable, using, with my addictive issues somewhere else. But if you go there with the mindset of like completely healing, I'd much rather do a lot of my healing, I think, on a beach than,
that's true.
Here in Cleveland.
Like you mentioned, there's no running away from your problems, and moving abroad isn't something that everyone should certainly do. But if you are interested in looking into it, I have a lot of resources and information on my website. Again, johnhdaviswriter.com, as well as my books and, more normal stuff as well.
Nice. And then before we get ready to wrap up, John, I want to ask you a couple questions I normally ask guests that I have on. Who are 3 people who've inspired you and you can credit for making you the person you are today?
I'd have to lead with my grandmother, who's a minister in my church, my best friend, Pat, who's a good dude. And then let's see, who's an influential person to me? Probably my mother. I gotta give my mother some credit, in case she watches this tomorrow or something.
Yeah, definitely gotta give mom a shout out.
Yeah, I gotta give mom a shout out. I always felt like, I grew up with a single mother, and the Army was kind of like my father. Like the Army provided the stern guidance and discipline, all that stuff, and my mother provided the love. Yeah,
awesome. And then speaking of things back here in the States, like what for our youth coming up, for the next generation, what classes do you feel should be mandatory before graduating high school today?
Financial education. I think that's probably the most important thing that's missing from primary education, is how money works, how taxes work, how credit cards work, things like that. I went to school for education and my master's in education as well. And I think classes on money are probably the most important thing for students to understand.
Well, you just gave me another question then. Taxes. How does that work? Do you have I'm sure there's something on your website for that, right?
Yeah, I still pay too much taxes to America, like pretty much everyone does.
Okay. Yeah, so nothing, I mean, what is that?
I'll tell you this: the taxes abroad are incredibly cheap. If you buy an enormous mansion in Costa Rica, your taxes are going to be like $500 a year. If you buy an enormous mansion in America, your taxes are going to be like $30,000 a year.
Wow! But then the process of doing your taxes for America, is it any more difficult living abroad?
No.
Is it just still?
No, I mean, I got the same tax guy in America. Yeah, same tax guy in America, and I still pay American taxes because I retain, that American citizenship.
Nice. And then, what was your favorite toy as a child?
Paintball gun, probably, or BB gun.
Nice. Shoot your eye out, kid?
Not my own eye out, but I definitely shot a lot of my friends up a little bit. But they all turned out okay.
And then, any other message you have for our brothers and sisters that are currently serving overseas?
Ooh, overseas. I think that one thing we have to get across is we're still with them in spirit. I think that, a lot of veterans a lot of active military who are overseas, especially in like conflict areas that in the world right now, like Syria or Jordan or wherever else, they don't really feel like America is with them. So I would like to say that we are with you. We are thinking about you. You stay in our prayers and come back safe.
And this is how my mind operates because I'm like always coming up with stuff. But, one thing that nobody taught me right away during my time in the military, especially with traveling, is, signing up for like hotel points or hotel memberships or like airline stuff. I wish I would have done that when I was on active duty because I'd have, I'm doing it now and playing catch up,
Yeah.
But is that something that you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, you have to have
sure.
You have to have a credit card with travel points for me because I use that for hotels and stuff like that when I'm traveling. I think that's a very important thing. And if you move abroad, there's tips like, you have to find a credit card or a debit card that doesn't charge international fees. So things like that are important when it comes to money. One of the toughest things about being abroad is sometimes like just getting at your money, like just, getting your money from dollars into pesos or whatever else. Because if you go to like an ATM, they're going to rip you off with like an exchange rate and charge you like $6 to take out your own money. I remember like one of my friends came to Dominican Republic and he goes to the ATM. He takes out, I think he took out 1,000 pesos. And he's like, I got 1,000. I was like, great. That's like $15. So good work. Like you just paid $6 to take out $15. So that was pretty much, so like, you have to figure out money stuff like that. And when you move abroad, the best experience, the best teacher is always experience. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to overpay for stuff. People are always going to kind of try and get the better of you when it comes to like taxis or whatever else, but you'll get the hang of it.
Gotcha. Well, man, John, it's been great talking with you. I learned a lot, and I'm glad I might take you up on that trip to the Dominican, come visit.
Yeah, I'll save a beer for you. Or no, I won't save a beer for you. I'll save a coconut for you. Fresh
coconut. Yeah, coconut's good. Yeah, man, it was really great talking with you, and hopefully, reach a lot of veterans and spread the word. And, once again, website is
JohnHDavisWriter.com. And then my Instagram, where I post a lot of videos, is the same, John.H.Davis.Writer. So go check it out. I also have some other stuff on there other than living abroad thing, but I'm happy to get this message out to veterans because there's no one else spreading it. There's no other veterans talking about the benefits of living abroad. And I think that it's only one benefit. It's an interconnected benefits when it comes to your financial health, your mental health, your emotional health. So for me, be able to spread this message has been really, really a cool journey.
Awesome. Yeah. And helping others helps us, so therapy for all of us. Well, yeah. And then real quick, before I let you go, you mind doing me a favor and cutting a promo ID for the show? Usually when I have veterans on, I have them introduce themselves at the last rank they held before they got out. So if you just introduce yourself at that, and then you're listening to today's Boondoggle.
Yep. Just do it now?
Yeah.
Okay. My name's Staff Sergeant Davis. Wait, sorry. You're listening to today's Boondoggle?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I fucked it up. This is Staff Sergeant Davis. You're listening to today's Boondoggle.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, John. I really appreciate it, man. It was really great talking to you. I learned a lot. And like I said, hope other veterans get this message and check out your website. And, hopefully I'll be having a coconut with you sometime in the Dominican soon.
Sounds good, brother. Have a good night.
All right. You too. Bye.